Hello, and welcome to another episode of Yummy Data Science. In this series of videos, I'm continuing with my class that I teach at UMass on public health data science using R. And in the previous modules, we've already talked about the historical perspective on data analysis, visualization, and data science. We talked about the three pioneers in public health, including Florence Nightingale, the mother of modern nursing, James Lind, the father of clinical trials, and John Snow, the father of epidemiology. And then we talked about the whole game of data science or the data science framework, which involves bringing your data in, understanding them, visualizing them, and then communicating results, and doing that in an iterative or programmatic manner. Then our third unit focused on visualization of health data sets, in which we looked at the amount charged versus the length of stay. And we did that, breaking it out by diagnosis and other related variables. And then we did some data transformation and wrangling of health data sets. Mostly it was about teaching DPLYR. And in the last two modules, we used a simplified file. And this file was created from synthetic claims data that are provided for by Medicare, CMS, and these are Medicare fee-for-service inpatient claims. These are synthetically created, but are excellent sources of for teaching and learning opportunities. So in this module, we are going to be talking about exploratory data analysis. And many textbooks will teach you exploratory data analysis. And I want to distinguish what my video is on. So my video is not on looking at the distributions of data in your file or trying to figure out if an analysis is possible. I'm actually talking several steps prior to this. If you are an analyst and you have a big file in your hands, what do you do with it? And in my work experience, the instances where people get stuck is the file is so unwieldy, it's so time consuming to open it up that they cannot even begin to figure out what is in it. And for that, if you do have a file like that, I would recommend that prior to opening your data or prior to trying to work with it, please look at the dictionary or any other sources of metadata. Sometimes the dictionary itself is very difficult. So see if you can try to figure out from where you got the data, if there are any sources that will give you a high-level overview. And then you work with the file and to understand what's in the file, what is your grain of your data. Okay. So what I'm hoping has happened already prior to any work with the inpatient claims file is that we have done our due diligence and we have watched these two videos, the key players of the US healthcare system and then key elements of facility claims, because these are hospital claims, so they are facility claims. And now we are going to be doing that, opening up the file. It's a big file. It's got 199 columns, as you'll soon see. And we are trying to figure out, what to make of it. What is in this file? How do we start? How do we get into a shape that we can begin the analysis, which is traditionally called exploratory data analysis. So I'm talking about the steps prior to that. So the way that this first in this slide, what I've laid out is, and you'll see this in the R script soon, is that I'll be importing the file in RStudio and I'll be looking at the contents with the glimpse function. Now I'm assuming that the glimpse function can read in a large data set, which is ordinarily true. And if that doesn't work, then you'll have to recourse to another methodology, but that's outside the scope. And with the glimpse function itself, you will see that there are some key fields that maybe haven't been read in correctly. So if there's patient ID or claim ID, or if there are some critical date fields that you know about from your prior knowledge and study of the metadata, then you can fix those. And then you can fix these column formats right away. That will help with your analysis of the data. And then you can glimpse it again, and you use the call name functions to view the column names. So let's jump into RStudio. And as always, I've double clicked on the R project file to initiate the project. And then I have brought in my script, which is called module 0501 EDA. Okay, so it's the first exploratory data analysis. Okay, so step one, let's read in the file. This is the inpatient file. And it was tab delimited. So, and that's what the information on the CMS website was telling me. So I made it tab delimited. And this itself might be a little bit of a pain for you to figure out, but let's assume that this has been done. And strings as factors is equal to false. Well, that's an R thing, because what R will do is if there are any character variables, for ease of modeling purposes later on, it will store them as factors. And any explanation of that is beyond the scope of this video. So for right now, let's just take it on face value that we're going to turn this to false. So now I'm going to run this, and it's going to take a little bit of time. And now you see that you have 58,000 rows. It's actually a small file compared to the files that are, the real files that you'll be dealing with. One way to deal with them is they will be in a distributed environment, and there will be a file for a month, for a particular segment of a year, and it will be in a different folder. So you could read in that file. You could read in the first 100 rows as well, something like that. Okay, in any case, let us run the glimpse function. And this was covered in a prior video, but glimpse is a different, it's a slightly better way of doing view, but it is intended to work with large data frames or tables. And what it does is it gives you this output, which if I scroll up, it tells you how many rows it has. It tells you how many columns it has. So already it's giving me some metadata. And then it's telling me each of those columns and the first few values. So I can already see that there are some things I need to fix how I read them in. BeneID is not a number. DBL stands for double, which is a numeric format. BeneID or patient ID should always be a character because it has no numeric value. It's not like you're going to get the mean of the BeneID. Same with the claim ID, and you'll see that claim from date pops up. So we're going to fix that. This is a character. We should read it as a date. And then the last thing to be looked at here is you can see that there is a claim line number. And I'm going to leave that, I'm not going to say anything more about it, but it's a clue that this is a compilation of the claim header and the claim detail. And if those concepts are not familiar to you, please go watch the video on key elements of facility claims. Okay, so now I know that I will fix the format of some important variables. And so I've done that with the transform function. And you can see I've got this pipe. Now, this pipe simply means do what's to the left of the pipe and then do this. So line 7 is saying create a data frame called inpatient, put the existing data frame inpatient in it, and then read Bene ID as a character, and then read claim ID as character, and then read patient discharge status code as a character, and so on and so forth. We get to the transformation of the dates, which are being read as dates. And then we are using the mutate function, which is a pretty powerful function for creating new variables. And what we are creating is length of stay here, which is the difference between the claim through date, or in most cases, the discharge date, minus the claim from date, in most cases, the admission date, and the units is days, and we are adding 1. So if the person is admitted and discharged on the same day, the LOS will not be 0, it will be 1. And that's just an industry standard. And then one other thing that I've done is I've created a year column, and I'm extracting the year from the claim through. I could also do the year from the claim I misspoke. I could also create the year from the claim from. It's industry practice to pick year from the discharge date. So I'll run this and I will glimpse it again. So now if you look at it, you can see that we have fixed it. So you'll see that the Bene ID is correctly read in. And now you can eyeball it. So you can see that these two values appear twice. And this claim ID, this one is appearing twice. So you're already getting a clue as to the granularity of the data. You know that claim IDs can appear twice. And there's a little bit of information over here, which is a claim line. So if you recall that claim ID and claim line perfectly identify the claim ID, and it has both the header and the detail information in it. And for more on that, please watch the video on the facility claims. So now what we're going to do is, this is way too many columns for us to work with at a first pass. So we are going to try to figure out what blocks of data or columns does it have and what blocks we don't need, so we could drop it. So we're going to go from a unmanageable number of columns, like it's now 200, and we're going to try to manage the number of columns. So one thing to do is to create a data frame with the columns. So here I've done that, and it is giving me all the columns. So now I'm going to take you back to the PowerPoint because we are on the second part. What I will do next is, now that I've put the column names in an object, it's actually list, not a data frame, I'm going to write out the column names in a CSV file. I'm going to open the CSV file with the column names, and then I'm going to peruse the column names and look at the order in which they're presented, because that might give me some information too. And one thing to note is that because this file we know already, its claim header and claim detail, we're expecting to see the claim header first, followed at the very end, we'll see the claim detail. And if you recall, when I showed you the column layout, the claim line, and there were other variables at the very end. So I'll peruse the column names in the order they're presented and try to make sense of the information. One thing also you can do is, if there are columns that are repeating, you can look those up. For example, you will see columns with the keyword POA appearing. And POA, if you look in the dictionary, it means present on admission. So now you know what all those variables are. Then what you can do, and I've done this already, is sort the column names alphabetically and create groups of columns. And then, of course, drop the columns that you do not need. And in our case, we are going to be dropping all the procedure date columns, the injury code columns, present and admission columns. And as a result of all that wonderful hard work, we'll go from almost 200 columns to 122. Still large, but a little bit more manageable. So let's get to that part. I'm going to write this. So here it is. So this is the order that they're appearing. And then, so let's just peruse this. So we see our familiar Bene ID, claim ID, we see from date, through date, and then we see a number of things that we may not know. But you see this physician, and say you look up UPIN and you'll find that in the data dictionary, it's a number that's been discontinued. So we can make a note that we're going to drop this. And NPI, if you've watched my previous videos, you know that there's a physician registry, and that's what this number pertains to. NPI refers to the physician registry. If you keep going down, so let's assume that we don't know much about these, but now you'll see that I have some columns with the keyword DGNS, diagnosis, and these seem to repeat. So there's code 1, code 2, and you know that facility claims have many places, many columns for capturing different diagnosis codes. And then you can see that you have the POA columns, and since we looked that up, we know that these are present on admission columns. So we'll keep going down. These, you'll see another pattern emerging, ICD diagnosis E codes. These are injury codes. And again, this is something you can easily look up. What are E codes for ICD diagnosis? And you'll see these are injury codes. So let's say we are not interested in those because we are mostly interested in the diagnosis codes. So we can drop those as well. And you can see that these are procedure dates, many procedure dates. So we're going to get rid of those as well. But we're going to keep the ICD procedure codes. And you can see there are so many of them as well. I believe there are 26 in all. And here is your clue. And this is your, if you're wondering about the granularity of the file, the granularity of the file is claim line, number. And then the rev center HCPCS code are on the claim line number level because those are from the claim detail file. So now I'm going to be looking at the same file, but it's been sorted correctly. So I've sorted it alphabetically, and this helps me put these. So this is a present on admission indicator for the. And so what I'm going to say is I'm going to make a rule that if it begins with present on admission or it somehow has that keyword, I'm going to drop the files. So that's what my notation on the begins with is. It just means these are my notes. So I know that there are many columns that have this in the suffix, in the prefix, and then the suffix is is 1 through 9 in this case. Same thing with claim present on an indication. This is the diagnosis code, whether it was present. So I wrote that down as well. You can see, I think there are 26 of these, 25 or 26 of those. There are my diagnosis codes, so I'm interested in those. And the diagnosis codes, there's actually a principal diagnosis code, an admitting diagnosis code, and then there's 1 through 26 or 25. And here are my E codes. So I've basically organized this information. So now I know what I'm going to drop from the file. The procedure date, there are so many of them. I know I'm going to drop anything beginning with. Now I'm going to write code that says inpatient. Overwrite the data set inpatient. You may not want to overwrite it. And then select. So any column that matches POA anywhere, I'm going to take that out. So this is a neat little DPLYR trick. Minus will simply take it out. So it will deselect it. Anything that ends with UPIN, recall that was the code, that was the provider number that has been continued. So anything that ends with UPIN, I'm going to also deselect that. Anything that starts with ICD diagnosis E code, I'm going to take that out. And anything that starts with procedure date, I'm going to take that out. And now let's glimpse it. And I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to look at this. So it's 122 variables. And it's not as bad as it was before. It's still a lot of columns. We know that we have a number of diagnosis columns. So there are 26 of those, actually a few more. And then there are NPI columns. And then we have admission type codes, discharge type codes. And we have claim line and claim header. A claim line. And the corresponding claim detail columns. So in this video, to summarize what we did in this video, we did some exploratory data analysis with the inpatient claims file. And this is the step that you do before you get to the actual data exploration, before you start looking at your data set and data distributions of your variables. This is to find out what is in your data, and to make sense of it. Files may be very large, so you want to peruse it, you want to deselect certain columns that you don't want, you want to fix the format of other important columns. So that's what we did. We went from 200 columns to, we cut it down by almost 50%. In the next video, we will continue this process and discover more about the file until we get it into a format that we can analyze it. Thank you for listening.